A $1,300 sim racing steering wheel. Who is it for and what is it best at? Those are the questions we're going to answer in this video today, because I flew out to Las Vegas for the Consumer Electronics Show to see all of the world's latest tech from the world's biggest companies, and Moza were there and they brought this, the Moza Porsche Mission R sim racing steering wheel for $1,300, and this is what they wanted to show the world with their crazy tech. And it does have crazy tech in it, but from a sim racing perspective, I couldn't quite get my head around it. I didn't really understand who it was going to be for. I'm a hardcore sim racer. I know people are going to be interested in buying this wheel, but who is it for? So I said to Moza, look, do you want me to make a video of me exploring this wheel and work out what it's not good at, what it is good at, and who I think it's for? And they said, yeah, sure. So this video is sponsored by Moza, but they haven't checked it. They haven't asked me to say anything. It's just me going on a journey with this wheel. And it's going to be interesting because there's some things I think this wheel is not good at that I thought it would be good at, and there's some things that this wheel is better at that I wasn't expecting, and that all comes from the philosophy. And you know, in this studio I've been talking a lot about the philosophy of sim racing, from ultra realism to kind of like ultra immersion and then ultra performance as well. They're all different things. Already you can see on this wheel, for example, there's no funky switches. So before we get into what this wheel is, the materials, what it's based on, because is it a replica? Kind of, but it's a bit loose. I just want to mention two other wheels. So this wheel is $1,300. It's obviously very expensive. I want to start this video by saying no one needs to buy this wheel. If you're on Moza, you can get something like the Moza KS Pro for about $1,000 cheaper. So in the Moza ecosystem, you don't need to buy this wheel. That kind of diffuses everything, because in other ecosystems, all the products are expensive. But in Moza's ecosystem, this is the most expensive wheel they do, but you don't need to buy it. However, I wanted to compare it very briefly with some other wheels where it's pretty obvious who they're for. So this is the Mercedes AMG wheel by SimLab. It's, I think, almost double the price of the Moza, by the way. But it's obviously a Formula 1 replica wheel. You know it's for the ultimate F1 fan. You know it's going to be good in sim racing when you're driving Formula 1 cars. So that's the SimLab AMG wheel that's made out of carbon fiber. And then we have here the Bavarian SimTech Omega V2 Pro wheel. That's also, I believe, about $1,000 more than the Moza wheel. But again, you know this is going to be a great GT wheel. It has like the rubbery grips. You know what it's for. So in some ways, this wheel is actually, whisper it, not crazy expensive compared to some other wheels out there. But it's also not obvious who it's for, because GT racing is very popular. F1 cars are very popular. This wheel is a replica of the Porsche Mission R, which is not the most popular car to drive in sim racing. Like, we all know that. Porsche have done a lot of content with this car. They've licensed a lot of content in sim racing games. It's in a lot of games, but you don't see a lot of people driving it. Now, this car has actually been made. It's a one-of-one car. It hasn't done like a production run. It's meant to represent the future of Porsche and motor racing, but it is kind of a replica. And actually, I did try this wheel driving the Mission R, and it was very interesting. So we're going to get there very soon. But first of all, the first thing I did, obviously, was just connect this wheel to my base, my Moza R25 Ultra, and just see if it works. And it worked out of the box. It had the actual Porsche Mission R dash, which is pretty crazy. I could map all the shifters. Everything worked fine. I'm doing this more and more as I make videos on wheels. Like, can you just plug them in and get them to work? I want that kind of like Christmas Day feeling when you unwrap the box, you just want to connect it and you want to go driving. Because I think too many products, you have to go through too many hoops in sim racing to actually get it working. So it does work out of the box, which is great. Obviously, then I updated everything and I amended some stuff as well with the settings to get it dialed in. And the first thing I really did was drive GT3 cars, because I like driving GT3 cars. They're the type of car that I drive most. And I was surprised. This is where we go on to some things that I think this wheel is not, in my mind, really designed 100% for GT3 racing. The first reason is that when I start driving this car with no gloves on, you can see that, and this was a similar thing that I saw in the Fanatec Porsche VGT wheel, which is also based on, like, well, that's actually technically a concept car. On that wheel, your thumbs rest on the aluminium, which is a bit unusual. In this wheel here, the Moza Porsche Mission R, there's a little bit of a lip between this Alcantara style material and the ridging here that goes into the part of the wheel that holds the screen. It's a crazy construction, this wheel. We're going to go into it. But there's a little bit of ridging, and when you're not wearing gloves and you hold the wheel tight, if you're in a GT3 car, you're holding the wheel tight like this, you're kind of pressing down into that ridge. And that is not comfortable, in my opinion. So without gloves and holding the wheel tight, it's not comfortable. So I think out of the box, this wheel is not designed to be driven driven for GT3 cars without gloves. Now, obviously, I then put on gloves, and because gloves have a little bit of protection around your thumb and fingers, actually, when you put on the gloves, that issue goes away because you have material that stops that ridge being an issue. So you can actually then hold the wheel tighter. But it got me thinking, like, that's interesting. This is not a, like, solely focused GT3 wheel out of the box. So then what I did is I drove the Mission R, the Porsche Mission R car in iRacing. And firstly, that's a crazy experience because this wheel is just one-to-one with it. You can see the footage on screen. There's a slight difference on the dash, which is interesting because before I updated the wheel, I had the little circular thing, and then when I updated it, I lost it. I also had to go into Moza Pit House to amend the dash from kilometers per hour to miles per hour, which was interesting. There's so much you can do in Pit House with customizing the dashes, but remember, you can't use SimHub on this display. You have to go through Moza Pit House. And when I got everything set up and drove the Mission R, I realised something. And I haven't driven that much of the Mission R before, though I have driven it in iRacing and Rennsport and other games like that. But I've never driven it at length before. I noticed that it's a really easy and light car to drive. It has some kind of like active stuff going on. That means it's very hard to get oversteer where you have to kind of like be correcting it. It's a very, very, very smooth and light car to drive. So you can drive it light. And when I looked at actually the hands of the iRacing dude in the cockpit, his thumbs are not as gripped in as I was doing when I was driving the GT3 car. And that's interesting because that's a much more comfortable way to use this wheel. And I know there's a massive debate about how gripped in your thumb should be in sim racing anyway. What if your wheelbase goes crazy? You don't want to break your wrists. I tend to grip in like that, but I saw in iRacing they were more relaxed. And I went to a little bit more relaxed start, and it's almost like then I sunk more into the wheel. So that was interesting. It's something I want to do more and more, is understand the philosophies of wheels. So I believe this wheel is designed to be held kind of lightly for a light steering experience. Even on something like an R25 Ultra, you know I'm never running that at 25 Newton meters. I'm running that much lower because I want to feel the LFE, I want to feel all those effects as well. So even if you've got a big heavy wheelbase with loads of torque, I would advise you to still run it lower down and have that light experience. Now, that's not to say there aren't some issues, again, when you're holding the wheel like that in a bit of a lighter way, because the buttons on the back, I find, are very easy to knock and press. So I can show you here exactly. If I'm holding the wheel like this, you can see that I can actually hit the buttons without having to move them. You can probably hear it. Now, for some people, that's going to be great because you can just basically clench your fist and hit the button, which is kind of insane. Some people are really not going to like that. So, you know, those people are not going to map the buttons, but I thought that's interesting because I would have expected the buttons to be a bit higher up, but they're not, they're there. So that's quite interesting. The buttons on the front are obviously very nice. I think the more wheels I see with buttons here, I really, really like it because you can just basically map it to your most used buttons. Now, in terms of the lack of funky switches, what I mentioned earlier, this is about the immersion, realism versus performance and functionality. You can see that the Mercedes SimLab wheel also doesn't have a funky switch because that is also a replica of a real-world wheel, whereas the Bavarian SimTech has two funky switches because it's not explicitly based on it's not a licensed product. Now, because this has to be the same wheel as the one in the Porsche Mission R, and obviously you don't have funky switches in real cars because you just have radio buttons to your engineers, etc., there's a different way of going through the menu system. So there's no funky switch here, but what I did is I mapped up and down to cycling through different black boxes, and up and down here to going down the different rows in the black box, and then this one to actually increment them. And it actually worked great. It got me thinking for a little bit, maybe we don't really always need funky switches to navigate menus that are going like just like that. We don't need like a joystick. I think it is easier to have funky switches, but also when you map it like this, it's absolutely fine, in my opinion, to navigate through those black boxes. So at this stage, I realized that, okay, I need to be holding the wheel a little bit lighter. I need to be not as gripped in because it's quite tight. Where your thumbs are here is quite a confined space. You want to be a little bit more outside it, and you want to be driving in a very relaxed style. And actually, what's interesting is that when I took my Moza Lamborghini wheel to Jerez, to the Lamborghini Super Trofeo World Finals, and which costs the same as this wheel, $1,300, and I gave it to actual Lamborghini drivers, it's interesting interesting the way they were holding the wheel was also in a light way. And you've seen a lot of content on my channel recently about how we should be running our wheelbase a little bit lighter, and actually there's a misconception about being too heavy. So this again goes into that philosophy. And where I found this wheel really shine, so who is it for? What is it best at? It's obviously for people that want to have a Porsche wheel. It's obviously people that are in Moza and you have the budget and you want to get a super nice wheel. It was the same with the Lamborghini Essenza. The interesting about the Lamborghini Essenza, even though that wheel doesn't have magnetic shifters, and therefore I thought I wouldn't be using that wheel a lot, I actually ended up using that wheel quite a bit. You'll see me in content using that wheel when I have a choice of wheels to use, which was a little bit surprising. I wasn't expecting to use it so much, given again it doesn't have funky switches, but it's just a really nice, solid, authentic, I like the weightiness of it, and I ended up using it. There's something that you can't explain about having a replica wheel like that. I think it might be the same with the Porsche, and I think the Porsche is actually probably a better wheel than the Lamborghini because of the screen, which obviously I'm going to get into because the screen is actually the most defining feature of this wheel, I would say. So if you've got the budget and you want something just super nice and you want a collector's item that comes in the collector's box, this is going to be for you. To some people this is going to sound crazy, but like if you do motorsport, we often buy helmets, like replica helmets. You're spending like getting close to $1,000 on like replica helmets with the paint and everything. I think it's a similar thing. So it's a very niche product there, but that's who I think it's for. Again, if you don't have the budget for $1,300, for example, I wouldn't be going out and buying it. Then you go and get the KS Pro for $349. Now, what is it best in? I had a revelation in this wheel when I was driving hypercars, okay? Because GT3s, I just couldn't quite still get there in GT3s, even with the gloves on, even with the different style, because I feel like you need to wrestle GT3s a bit more. It doesn't feel like a wheel that you want to wrestle. It feels like a wheel that has a lot of finesse. When I was in the hypercars, on the R25 and this wheel, so we're talking a very expensive setup, like over $2,000 setup, unbelievable experience, as it should be for that kind of money, let's be honest, but it was phenomenal. And this is where the screen comes into play. This is the best screen I've ever seen on any steering wheel ever, and actually is probably better than some DDUs. We saw Fanatec come out recently, or Corsair, with their Xenon Edge, which is a massive screen, but this is also a 720p screen and also 60 Hz, but it's in the wheel. And it's curved, and it's an OLED. And it's just, this is why I think this wheel is actually better than the Lamborghini Essenza wheel. Sorry everyone at Lamborghini, because the screen is insane. And there is a lot of customization in Pit House. I do wish it was SimHub compatible as well, but you can actually customize a lot in SimHub with functions, etc. So you can really make the dashes very bespoke to what you want. And when you're in a hypercar and you're in something like Le Mans Ultimate and there's a lot going on and you want to be using your screen, this wheel really comes into its own. So if you're someone that has that budget and you like driving hypercars, I think this is genuinely a very good wheel for that use case. If this is really stretching your budget, you're really performance orientated and you want to drive GT3s, I think you might be better off getting a KS Pro, to be honest. And then you compare it with a better wheelbase. But for hypercars, this is pretty insane. And also, this is where I've got to really max out the wheel and appreciate the construction, which is all this like CNC aluminium, and it has essentially like an exoskeleton. This wheel looks much better in person than it does definitely in the early preview images that we all saw on the internet. But when you look here, the construction is actually insane. And you can see that it feels like they've almost removed the items that could have some flex, like the screen, from the exoskeleton of the wheel, which is pretty damn crazy. Like, the construction here for me, again, is nicer than the Moza Lamborghini wheel. Like, how they've done this, you start to feel like this is pretty impressive for $1,300. Like, you know, these wheels are a lot more simpler architecturally, I believe, than this one. I know this is carbon fiber ply, so it would have been plied in, and I've been to factories and seen how they do that with steering wheels, but I believe this construction is pretty insane, and it actually feels incredibly rigid. So again, when you're in a hypercar and you're having those moments where you're turning into something like Pouhon at Spa, and you want to like really finesse the amount of lock you've got, this wheel is utterly fantastic for that. Some other quick features for anyone who's thinking of buying it. It does come with that new Moza quick release with a little lip, which is great. Hopefully that's going to be standard. You have the clutch paddles as well. You have free like letters on your buttons. That's going to annoy some people. If you've seen my wheels, I don't really sticker them. The only sticker I've done is a WhatsApp button, so it's not really going to annoy me, but I can see that they've done that. That might annoy some people. It would be cool if the Porsche badge was illuminated as well. I think that would be insane. So that Porsche badge is not illuminated, but the screen, so bright. It's so bright, and it's the colors are so saturated. I believe that you can actually kind of see it in your peripheral vision. For example, if there's a yellow flag, I know you're going to have your yellow flag pop up in your sim and maybe on your wheel in your sim if you have it there. But it's going to be so bright here when it pops up on your screen that you are really going to notice it. In fact, I think you could make the gear change numbers big enough, and with different colors, you could peripherally know what gear you're in by the colors on the screen, because it is just so bright and so saturated. Maybe you'll understand what I mean, but I'll try and prove it in some video. I don't know how we're going to show that, but I'll try. So it's definitely an interesting journey to go on with this wheel, because you look at it at the beginning, you're like, it's a $1,300 wheel. It's very expensive. You can already get in the Moza ecosystem stuff like the CS Pro and KS Pro that are like $1,000 cheaper. So who is this wheel really for? Does it stack up as a collector's item? I think absolutely yes, in the same way the Lamborghini does. And actually, I don't think it's crazy expensive as a collector's item. Again, no one needs to get this wheel. We can all get the CS Pro and KS Pro instead. And where does it really shine? Given that not a lot, basically no one's going to be driving the Porsche Mission R competitively, the lobbies don't fill up on it, I think this is a hypercar wheel. And then I feel like I have a stack here. I've got a Formula 1 wheel, a GT3 wheel, and a hypercar wheel. And that's where all these wheels really excel. So let me know if you found this interesting. Let me know if you've got any more questions about this wheel, because I'm very lucky to have it as a review unit. I'll try and answer all your questions, and I'll see you in the next video.